A very common feeling to feel is feeling like a failure. So feeling like you're not doing things right, which can be compounded by when you're in the early weeks and your baby's, crying non-stop, and you can't find the way straight away to settle baby. So those kind of situations in the beginning are times that are like rife for these feelings of failure and not doing it right. And these thoughts actually come from feelings of shame. So somewhere, whether we're conscious of it or not, we're feeling shame. So this is where I'm like referencing the work of Brene Brown a lot. So she's got quite a few books. The one I'm reading at the moment is Dare to Lead, and there was a lot of thoughts in that which I'm going to talk about here, which can be applied easily to new mums. So when we talk about shame, there is a subtle difference between shame and guilt. So, we I think we talk a lot about feeling the mummy guilt after we've had a baby as well, which is another common feeling. But the difference between guilt and shame is that guilt is more like I did something bad, whereas shame is I am bad. And so that's your feelings of feeling not good enough, feeling like a failure because you feel shameful and you feel that you are bad. And sometimes these feelings of feeling like you are intrinsically bad can develop further then and get to the point where you feel like maybe your baby will be better off without you. And you have feelings of either self-harm, suicide, things like that. So that's kind of at the extreme end of the spectrum. But all these feelings and thoughts are essentially fueled by that intrinsic feeling of shame. What is shame? Why do we have that feeling of shame? Why does that come up? Well, she says that shame is a fear of disconnection. And, we are, as a human species, we need that connection. It's kind of built into our survival type thing. So to have the fear that connection isn't going to be there is quite a powerful subliminal drive. Actually, we can see the manifestations of shame in a couple of ways. Maybe internally, we have these feelings that we are bad and we are a failure and our baby would be better off without us. That's one manifestation of the feeling of shame. Another manifestation of shame is when it causes like more outward behaviours. So sometimes in women and mothers, not always, but sometimes you can find groups of women to be quite cliquey, and sometimes we can see quite a competitiveness between mums and women. And as an example, you've got Facebook and social media and online where, somebody can come up with an issue that is, people get a very divided opinion on. And then you can see, in the comments, people really slating other mums. I've seen that before. People really, mums trying to be open and vulnerable maybe through a social media post, and other mums just jumping on her like almost like a pack of wolves. We can see that a lot. It's really highlighted by obviously the ease of being able to just shoot off your opinion. And again, I think that's all based in this feeling of shame, which is there and has manifested in this outwards behaviour, which is almost a kind of defensive attacking behaviour. So actually, we're all feeling that feeling to some degree. Okay, so you might say, right, well, if the shame is causing it, how do we get rid of shame? Okay, the news is we can't get rid of shame. You can't just wipe it off, because again, you can try and mask it and bury it. And again, that's one of these things, say for example, drinking, excessive alcohol consumption is something you might use when you are feeling a lot of shame, and that masks the shame, but it doesn't get rid of it. So we can't just sweep it away, really. without doing serious damage to ourselves. But we can find the right people to be authentic with is the step to take to maybe start talking about our feelings a bit more and talking about shame as a feeling, because even just talking about shame itself is quite uncomfortable for people. But actually, the more we kind of shine a light on it, the more it has less of a power and less of a hold over us and our thoughts. So, again, going back to shame as a fear of disconnection, then we're seeking connection. So that's when we need to find the right people to like be authentic with and be vulnerable with as well and connect with. And when we find those sorts of people, we can experience more of the antidote of shame, which, as Brene says in a book again, is empathy and self compassion. And this is what we try and achieve with our mother's circles, is that we're creating this safe space with the right people to create that connection between mums and have it as a safe space where we can talk about, things like shame, shine a light on it, and start to find that connection and authenticity, which ultimately helps us with our mental and emotional health at such a vulnerable time. If you've ever been in any kind of, not just mother's circle, but any kind of woman's circle where there's such an energy and women have the courage in these circles to kind of really be vulnerable and share their stories. And it is actually amazing the amount of kind of emotional healing that can take place just through that simple act because of that connection. So if you can think of some times in your life where maybe someone has been vulnerable with you and maybe shared a story, and then your reaction to that is often one of more an empathetic reaction. So definitely a good tool to use for mental and emotional health after having your baby is finding the right people to be vulnerable with. Because sometimes we do inevitably, we think we found the right people and we haven't, and we get stung for it. But if you find the right people to really build those connections with, then you're going to have less of this fear of disconnection and this shame. And when it does come up, which it inevitably will, you've got tools and ways and people to share it with and to support you on your journey, and people around you as well to maybe help you if you are feeling more out of control or feeling like you need medical support, help you to take that step, which we talked about at the beginning is often so hard and such a big step to do in one go. So I hope this video has been useful. I'm going to do a couple more based around physical healing tips as well. I will be doing more content around mental and emotional health after childbirth in the future. So do let me know if there's anything particular you want me to talk about or you want me to cover. But hopefully I'll be doing a bit more of that on the podcast as well. So if you haven't already, you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or you can listen to it on the website as well.